The ninth season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. Over the last decade or so, there have been many efforts to make sure that the children in our state are safe, but you can't always keep them safe. So people have to end up taking these children and perhaps putting them through a system that is not a comfortable one for them. We're talking about child abuse, sexual assault, those kinds of things. They have to deal with police, they have to deal with social workers, they have to deal with all kinds of people. And there are efforts in Nebraska that are trying to make this as easy for the child and hopefully a better outcome for the child. My guests this week are Gene Klein. He is the executive director of Project Harmony, which is what all our guests are involved with, but you'll find out more. Leanne Rettelsdorf is the chief prosecutor for Douglas County. Welcome. Also with us today is Barry DeYoung, and he is a lieutenant with the Omaha Police Department and works with Special Victims Unit.
Yes.
We've heard that, like SVU, like on Law and Order. That's the kind of thing. And also, last but not least, is Vicki Maka. She is Nebraska Health and Human Services Child Welfare Administrator. I want to thank you for being here. Let's start with Gary. What we're talking about is, instead of putting the kid through numerous ringers, number one, we don't want to put him through any ringer,
right.
The child. This is important.
That's right. You know, I think in the early 90s, people like Leanne Rettelsdorf, other community leaders came together and noticed that what we were asking kids to do in the middle of an investigation was to be interviewed by many different people, tell that story over and over again. And several leaders came together and said, we have to change the way we're doing our business. We're really re-traumatizing kids as a result of an investigation of child abuse.
So Project Harmony was born
really in 1996, and Leanne was one of the first board members that was on the board and actually on the steering committee that started it. She might talk a little bit more about why at that time were they interested in developing a child advocacy center like Project Harmony.
Leanne.
Sure. Back in the early 90s, there was a couple real significant reasons. The primary reason was that when children wanted or needed to report that something had happened to them, they had to make that report down at the Omaha Police Department, the department itself, in the same types of rooms, under the same types of circumstances as adult witnesses were being interviewed. They were subject to seeing prisoners being taken from cars into the building, or prisoners being walked across hallways at the police department. The rooms were not comfortable. They were the same rooms in which perpetrators were being examined and or talked to in. And we thought that if our objective is to really get to the truth in these kinds of reports, then we need to put the children in a situation where they're comfortable, they're safe, and they feel comfortable to talk. And that was one of the primary impetus behind coming up with a separate building. Then we looked and we said, what else does this child go through? What are the steps that they go through? They go through a medical exam frequently, police interview, social worker interview, court process, and additional interviews from defense attorneys and sometimes defense specialists. And our thought process was that if we do one interview with the child and we put it on a videotape and we try to make that as complete as possible, then we might not have to repeat that interview over and over again with the child. And those were the primary things behind the initial steps that brought a number of community leaders from education, from the medical profession, from law enforcement together to come up with the idea.
Now there are similar things that are going on, this sort of cohesive effort across the state, but is Omaha's Project Harmony the only one that houses it all in one facility?
Right. There, at our location, there are about 14 staff from the Special Victims Unit, is that right, Barry? And about 50 staff from Nebraska Health and Human Services. And then Project Harmony itself is a nonprofit agency which has 15 staff. So together we have, well over 80 staff in one location, and everyone in the building is focused on the investigation of child abuse cases. impetus for Project Harmony was really focused initially on sexual abuse cases. Those are the most difficult cases for law enforcement to handle. Maybe, Barry, you can talk about the evidence and the importance of evidence and the difficulty in gathering evidence in those cases.
Well, if you watch Special Victims Unit, Law and Order, which I'm a big Law and Order fan, that's one of the things that makes me saddest when I see that, is that, and this is fiction, I know, but obviously from what you had described, this kind of thing does happen even now, maybe not in Nebraska, but it does, and it's the worst case scenario for everyone that's trying to win for the children, is it not?
Yes, it is, yeah. Children are often victimized by people who love them the most, and it takes special training, and it takes really special people to be able to talk to a child. You don't use the same style or techniques that you do with adults when talking about a sexual abuse. The language has to be different. You have to establish what the child knows and is able to comprehend too. So there are a lot of challenges.
And where does Health and Human Services come in? Is this assessing the welfare part of the child?
Well, our role, we have a couple different roles at Project Harmony. Our first role is we have the hotline for child abuse and neglect, as well as adult neglect and abuse at Project Harmony. And after 5 during the week, we serve as the state's hotline. So we take calls from across the state of Nebraska after 5 during the week. So all the abuse and neglect calls really start, the funnel is the hotline. And then we determine which of those calls we need to go out on, either with law enforcement or without law enforcement. And then those calls that are accepted are then given to the initial assessment unit, where we have just over 30 initial assessment workers who do the actual investigations of child abuse and neglect, working very closely with law enforcement and the county attorney's office.
Now, when we had a situation 3 years ago where there was investigations and panels appointed by the governor concerning a spate of child deaths, and I'm assuming that statistically those kinds of numbers can go up and down, just like homicides. But there was concern that they could have been caught earlier. Having all kinds of people to investigate, potentially, you could take a policeman with you. There was talk even then about doing what you were already doing, making sure that the police and the social workers were, could work together. They were talking the same language. They were talking the same language as a potential prosecutor, or knew what the language was. That's pretty well integrated here, is it not?
It is, and it's even more integrated than it was at the time of the governor's task force. One of the recommendations that came out of there was a coordinator position that really doesn't manage the staff in each agency, but really helps us make sure we're all on the same page. And this position is an employee of Project Harmony. Sometimes she's our best friend, and sometimes she's not our best friend, because she really sees the breakdowns when a handoff isn't made the way it needs to be. But that position has really helped make sure we all are on the same page and we're communicating. Even though we're in the same building, you can exist and not really connect and relate the way you need to, but this position has really forced us to all make sure that we're talking about these critical cases and handing off information when it needs to be.
Now, I know that though Project Harmony is located in Omaha, it does more than just work with Omaha Police or Douglas County. Where does because your expertise is obviously pretty, people are able to call you and go, how does this reach out?
Right. All of the children that are seen by the medical staff and forensic interviewers at Project Harmony are coordinated through law enforcement or Child Protective Services. Essentially Douglas and Sarpy County in Nebraska, and then in Iowa there are 14 counties, mainly Pot County, but kind of a circle around Pot County. Those law enforcement and Child Protective Service investigators also bring kids to Project Harmony for those exams. It's the medical expertise and the interviews that we can offer those. What we bring to the table with the local Douglas County folks is the collaboration. We're all in the same building together. I don't know. There may be another collaborative out there where you have city, county, state government working together with nonprofits. It's pretty unusual that you have all those in one location.
You know, we've heard a lot recently about trying to keep sexual predators away from our children. I mean, we're geographically concerned about that. And I don't want you to get into the political thing of it, except that from a prosecutor's point of view, many of the cases that involve sexual assault, for instance, aren't necessarily convicted. Are they significant others in the family, relatives, friends? I mean,
That's the difficult thing about prevention and prosecution of sexual assaults is there is no typical. There is no the most are this way. It is we have perpetrators of sexual assaults on children will take every advantage or any advantage that they have to get into a relationship or a situation with that child where there's a trusting bond, and that can be someone that the child is comfortable with from the family. It can be some other way in which these perpetrators figure out a way to make children comfortable. With the advent and the fact that there's computers and internets in most homes now, geographic location may not be as significant as it once was, because we see a society that is, our children are more mobile. They're not so much attached only to school and church as they may have been. They are traveling on teams across cities, across states, sports teams, all different kinds of things, and then our perpetrators are more mobile with the computers and different things like that. So I guess, I don't know if that really answers your question. I think that
there's no magic formula.
There isn't.
I guess I'm asking. I'm not saying to be for or against these kind
no,
of...
I'm just saying I don't know that the geographic location of perpetrators and victims, it's one factor,
Right.
but it's not the only one.
When your job, or in your years of working with this, is to make sure that if there is a perpetrator and someone is guilty, that they are taken out of the way of children. I mean, that's the ultimate thing.
Right.
You can talk about justice and punishment and all that, but that's
Right.
the ultimate thing. Does this sort of arrangement, has this been helpful?
I cannot, I don't, in a half an hour, I can't even begin to address all the positive things that this arrangement has done for the prosecution of perpetrators of children. But I guess I think the most important thing is that not only do I prosecute those that are guilty of harming children, but we also work to make sure that people are not accused of doing something that they haven't done. Project Harmony is unique in the sense that it is a truth finder. There is no agenda at Project Harmony to prove that abuse is occurring. What Project Harmony does is, through its trained interviewers in its association with the police department and Child Protective Services, is it takes each one of these cases, looks at all the family dynamics, examines all the surrounding circumstances, listens to the child, does medical exams, and then when the factors warrant it, they bring it and they present it to the county attorney's office. Prior to Project Harmony, the police did an investigation, social services did an investigation, and there was some medical intervention. And those three things came in separately. There was no coordinated effort. Investigative pieces were missed and repeated or not done in a thorough manner. So the advantages to the criminal justice system since Project Harmony has come about are just, there's not, as commercial would say, they're priceless.
When you two started in doing what you do in your respective careers, have you seen how you know how things have changed, but have concrete differences that you can feel that are pretty visceral even for you?
Just in the sense of working with social workers, I hadn't done that through much of my career. I had an idea what social work
And I
was.
bet you even had some stereotypes.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
bet there were a few.
Good ones, though, I want to
Yeah.
say.
Oh, no, but I mean that's a typical of
Right.
Absolutely.
It wasn't until we started working shoulder to shoulder and sharing information, and that's the key to this, is because I've got vital pieces to the investigation and the puzzle, but I don't have them all. And it wasn't until I started collaborating or understanding what the social workers and Health and Human Services have to bring, that we really had a much better investigative approach. We had a lot more history, we had resources, we had more ears and more eyes to look at situations than we ever had before. You get so caught up in trying to do your own thing, and you know the cases are coming so quick and fast and furious that you forget that you're just one piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, one of the things that really stands out for me is years ago, when we were doing this interviewing separately, where law enforcement would interview the child and then the social worker would interview the child, there was this question of, well, where should the child be during the interview, in between the interview? And many times they were in police cruisers while social workers were trying to find an emergency foster care home, or they were in cubicles of social workers hearing things that maybe weren't real appropriate for them to hear. Not a very calming and relaxing environment.
I'm guessing not.
And Project Harmony has created this beautiful space. We call it the Triage Center.
And that's really what it is, if you look at the medical model.
It is, where children can go. We have a beautiful kitchenette, murals on the wall, TV, books, games, food, laundry room, clean clothes, where kids can just be kids and do what kids do while they're waiting to go talk to law enforcement, or while they're waiting to go to an emergency foster care home, or back home, or with a relative. And so just the quality, I think, of the services has really improved for kids. So it's not such a scary process for them.
When we think of kids, what ages are we talking about? I'm envisioning the younger children.
You know, this week we had a 3-day-old that was in the center, and up to 18. So 50% of the kids are under the age of 6. So most of the children are young, but we'd serve up to the age of 18.
I wonder when people report, you know, we want people to report suspect. There are those that are it's mandatory. In fact, that's even changed.
We are all mandatory.
Well, certainly we are, in terms of our conscience, but they've even increased the number of people that have to report.
Right.
But for so many people and so many years, it's not only do they not want to get involved, but because a family member or someone close might be involved, they didn't want to be the one to ruin the family or ruin the marriage. And I guess if they see what you're doing, I'm wondering, I'm hoping, but I myself would be more reassured that if they're not quite sure, because you know you can stir up a hornet's nest.
Right. You know,
I can give you a good example of that. What I was going to say is one of the pieces that's not here at this table today is the pediatricians and the medical people in Omaha. And there used to be a lot of friction because pediatricians that were taking care of families for ages might see something somewhat suspicious and would be so incredibly hesitant to call in police when this was their family that they'd taken care of for years and years, and they didn't want to lose the caretaking responsibility if they were mistaken. And I think that by the numbers of referrals from pediatricians and their involvement in Project Harmony, their donations to Project Harmony, and their comfort level, we see a lot more referrals from pediatricians on things that they're concerned about.
And I would always encourage people, when in doubt, to call. Make that call, talk to a hotline worker. They're very trained and skilled at getting the information that we need. And then we can make the decision based on history. Have we gotten lots of other calls about this family, concerns? We can call the schools, we can call law enforcement, we can call the social workers at the hospitals. Get more information so we can really make a good decision, because we can be a very intrusive system. And we don't want to go out unless we really need to go out and assess for safety or risk.
Because when you're on the line, I suppose, to whether you did see something that was child abuse, or whether you heard something, or whether you saw this bruise, or whatever the situation is that you're going, this is going to create havoc in probably a whole family's life, if not a whole neighborhood, or those things are sort of like throwing a pebble in the water.
but you never know. You could be the 10th person that's making that call. You know, you may just see this little bit of information, and you don't know the rest of the story. Maybe the school's already made phone calls. Maybe the doctor has already made phone calls. So, what's the number? 1-800-652-1999. Really, if we're going to get ahead of child abuse and intervene when kids are, I guess, less abused or less damaged, we need to get in sooner, substantiate whether or not something's going on, maybe offer some services to that family. One of the things that Health and Human Services can do is offer supportive services, homemaker services, intervention and treatment services. If we can get those earlier on, hopefully we can keep kids together with family and preserve that situation.
That's right.
The numbers that you have of the police people and the social workers is impressive, because my vision, if I had just gone off what I heard on the news or read or watched TV, is that you're so understaffed. I mean, everybody's understaffed, but you're so understaffed that these children are just going to get, hang there in limbo, and that and all these. You know, I hate that word.
Well, I think that the numbers are significant. I mean, Vicki can talk about the hotline numbers, but it's well over 9,000 just for Douglas County. These are new calls of child abuse and neglect to the hotline in a year's time. They have over 420 to 500 active investigations going on at any time. So those 30 workers and 14 detectives have their hands full with every case, and every kid is treated with great respect. The fact that we are all together allows us to be more efficient with the time. The phone calls, you're not chasing people through the phone. They can walk right around the corner and say, let's go out this afternoon, or what'd you see when you went out to the home last night?
I also do want to clear up the perception that kids are hanging. We have 455 open active cases right now in Douglas and Sarpy County where they're open investigations. But sometimes these investigations take a while. We don't want to rush to assumptions. We want to talk to everybody in the family. We want to talk to all the collateral people involved. We want to work hand in hand with law enforcement. So while they are open, we've had contact, we've put in safety services, crisis services, we've done safety planning. We may have people out in the family's home every day to ensure safety while we're trying to make some really good educated decisions about the best interests of the children in that family. So we are very busy, but I can assure you that we are held very accountable for those children and responding quickly to the needs of the kids in our community.
This all comes down to money, too. This was sounds like and is working out as a terrific idea for children. Leanne, when you were sort of involved with this, gee, we could do this. This would be great. What were some of the financial
we had
challenges?
No money. You know, it's another one of those deals like when you get from the legislature an unfunded mandate that tells you that the police departments or the county attorney's office is going to do this, and good luck. But I think that I guess it's one of the things that makes you really proud to be in Omaha, Nebraska, because there are an awful lot of private donors and people in Omaha, Nebraska that care about this issue, that have taken the time to come to Project Harmony. Actually, you know, it's not just a matter of them writing out checks. Jean can talk more about the funding, but it was...
Well, hospitals have chipped in,
it was,
a lot of individuals.
It was a matter of letting people know what we were doing and showing them that it really was something that made a difference. It made a difference in getting to the truth of investigations. It made a huge difference in the experience that these children had. And hopefully it makes an experience in our ability to convict perpetrators and in our ability for these children not to have, maybe have that victim mentality their whole lives.
And then to be able to move, I mean, you have people that are investigating these things anyway. You have people that are doing the same. To be able to put them together and again use sort of the efficiencies and the economies of scale.
Right, exactly. Having people in the same location. You know, I think the donors that do contribute to Project Harmony see this as a good investment. We've got government working with nonprofit for a very focused cause, child abuse, and working hand in hand. And so the donor community has been extremely supportive of Project Harmony and has been there when we've needed new equipment, new interview room, remodeling for the triage center, have been terrific for us as a community.
Now, statewide, we mentioned earlier that they don't have different areas of the state don't have the all under one, one
Right.
stop.
This is pretty unique. There are only about 5 or 6 in the country that are co-located the way we are, but there are centers in Norfolk, Lincoln, Grand Island, Kearney, Scottsbluff, and North Platte.
And just for the record, there's a national model that you've all sort of bought into.
Right.
Is that right?
That is right. The National Children's Alliance puts out some standards for what do you need to be considered. They call it a child advocacy center. We call it a child protection center here in Omaha. But this is based on a model that is well researched, very well documented, goes back to the early 80s as a way of doing good business in child welfare.
We just have a couple of minutes, and I want to start over here and make the rounds. Vicki, what is the very best thing that you've seen come out of this? Not the best, I guess. One of the best things that you.
Well, I think besides the obvious one, the partnership and the efficiencies, the triage center is just an amazing place for kids, and it kind of allows us to take a time out and to really look for those kids that can't go home that night and may not go home for a while. It gives us a time out to really look at relatives and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas, and we have all the resources we need with the police there to do background checks on those people. We have workers that can go out and visit that home prior to the child leaving the triage center. So having the triage center there with these great partners, it's wonderful. It is absolutely best practice for children.
I would have to say we've removed a lot of the artificial barriers that were up in the past that hindered us from working together, and now we can literally walk into each other's office, make a phone call, and have more hands to help lift.
And you've taken down the turf fences
Absolutely.
because they did exist. They did exist for a while.
It's an understatement,
Yeah.
sure.
Is that what, Leanne? Is that one of the best things that you've seen? Or what
Definitely one of the best things that I've seen. From my perspective as a prosecutor, the very best thing is that when the police department comes to my office and says, we believe that we have identified the person that committed a crime and here's why we believe so, I know that I'm getting a very competent, thorough investigation, and I can feel real comfortable that everything to find out what happened has been done by the absolute most professional people that I've worked with. That goes from the medical people at Project Harmony, Police Department, and Social Services.
And I guess I'm just going to let you give a 1 or 2 word answer to this, is that people that are concerned about children in their lives can rest a little more assured?
Absolutely. It's the people that I would say is the greatest thing. It's the detectives and the caseworkers and the prosecutors.
Well, I want to thank you so much. I'm not going to rattle off all your names out, but I do want to thank you. We're running short of time. You've seen the website on the screen. Please use it if you need to. And remember, keep your eyes out for the kids. Take care. Thank you.
Program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 9th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Sunday at 5 p.m.